Think Grandma's kitchen was a magical place where calories didn't count? Well, it was, and it still is in our nostalgic dreams. Today, we're diving into those legendary meals that turned every family dinner into a grand event. We're talking meatloaf that could make you forget your workout plans, and apple pie so incredible it might just be the eighth wonder of the world. So, grab your fork, loosen your belt, and get ready to relive the ultimate comfort food experience. Just remember, if you find yourself drooling, it's totally normal. Welcome to Flashback Foods, where we celebrate the bites that time forgot and the dishes that made history in Grandma's kitchen. Stick around for a delicious dive into the meals that made family dinners legendary. Grandma's classic meatloaf, the dish that could make even the most hardened of hearts soften like butter. Picture this, a loaf of meat so tender it practically melts in your mouth, slathered in a glaze that's as sweet as a family hug. Grandma's meatloaf was the culinary equivalent of a warm, fuzzy blanket. Meatloaf, a dish so iconic, it's practically a rite of passage for every grandma. This classic became a staple during the Great Depression, when stretching a pound of meat to feed a family was a culinary survival skill. Originating from ancient Rome, yes, really, the idea was to mix meat scraps with bread. Sound familiar? By the time it hit Grandma's kitchen, it was all about those cold meatloaf sandwiches the next day. Efficient and delicious, just like Grandma herself. She'd mix up ground beef with breadcrumbs, eggs, and a top-secret blend of spices that, let's be honest, probably included a pinch of magic. Then she'd lovingly slap it in a baking dish and top it with a ketchup glaze that made every bite a little slice of heaven. It's the kind of meal that makes you forget you're trying to cut carbs. Hey, if Grandma made it, it's basically a superfood, right? The leftovers, don't even get me started. They were like a second chance at a home-cooked meal. Meatloaf sandwiches were practically a rite of passage, and let's face it, if you ever tried to sneak a second helping, Grandma's knowing glance made it clear you were onto something good. This meatloaf didn't just fill stomachs, it filled hearts. And don't forget the little bit of envy from the neighbors when Grandma pulled that meatloaf out of the oven, because nothing says I've got my life together like a perfectly baked meatloaf. Chicken and dumplings, a southern comfort food that's all about turning a little into a lot. Born during the Great Depression, this dish made one chicken feed an entire family. Dumplings, a variation of the original Chinese invention, were added to soak up all that creamy goodness. Grandma's version? A hug in a bowl, designed to fill you up and warm your soul. No wonder it's a family favorite. Grandma would whip up this dish with the precision of a maestro conducting an orchestra. The chicken, tender as a lullaby, simmered in a broth that was creamy enough to make you believe in magic. The dumplings, oh, the dumplings. Each one was like a fluffy little cloud of pure comfort, floating effortlessly in that rich, velvety broth. You'd sit down with a steaming bowl and instantly feel like the world's problems melted away with each spoonful. Leftovers were practically a holy grail. They were so coveted that if you didn't claim them fast, they'd mysteriously disappear as if by magic. Trying to recreate this masterpiece at home was always a challenge. It was like chasing a unicorn. Somehow, Grandma's secret ingredient remained just that, a secret. But honestly, it didn't matter if you couldn't make it just right, because each bite was a delicious reminder of those simple, perfect family dinners. The kind where the food wasn't just eaten, but celebrated. Grandma's homemade apple pie. Let's just say it had a reputation. If there was a culinary hall of fame for desserts, this pie would have its own star, with a spotlight shining just for it. This was the dessert that made everyone drop their diet plans faster than you could say, "Extra slice, please." Apple pie might be the most American dessert ever now, but it started in 14th century England. Back then, it was all about hard apples and no sugar. What? Thankfully, by the time it hit Grandma's kitchen, it had evolved into the sweet cinnamon lace treat we know today. One bite, and it's like a hug from the past. Imagine Grandma rolling out the dough with the kind of finesse that could make professional bakers weep with envy. The apple filling, spiced to perfection with cinnamon and a dash of secret magic, was so aromatic that it could lure you into the kitchen from 3 rooms away. The crust was flaky and golden, as if it had been kissed by pastry fairies. Each bite was a blissful reminder that life's best moments often come wrapped in a buttery crust. And let's be honest, the slice with the most caramelized apples was always the most coveted. If you were lucky enough to snag that piece, you felt like you'd won the dessert lottery. And don't ask about leftovers. Grandma's pie was so popular that the last slice was often fought over with the intensity of a Black Friday sale. But even if you didn't get a piece, the memory of that perfect apple pie was enough to keep you dreaming sweet dreams. Pot roast, a slow-cooked miracle that made even the toughest cuts of meat melt like butter. This dish has been simmering in American kitchens since the 19th century, thanks to the low and slow cooking method. Why did Grandma love it? It was an easy way to feed a crowd without breaking a sweat. Plus, who could resist that rich, savory aroma filling the house all day? Grandma's classic pot roast was a meal that could make even the most mundane Sunday feel like a festive occasion. This wasn't just any pot roast. This was a tender, flavorful masterpiece that came out of the oven smelling like heaven and tasting even better. Imagine Grandma carefully seasoning the roast, then letting it cook slowly in a savory bath of herbs, vegetables, and potatoes. The result? A dish so tender it practically melted in your mouth with each forkful. The beef was cooked to perfection with a rich gravy that had everyone reaching for seconds and maybe even thirds. This pot roast wasn't just food, it was an experience. The smell alone was enough to have everyone lining up at the table, eager to dig in. Grandma's roast was always a hit at family dinners, transforming any ordinary meal into something extraordinary. Leftovers were a different story. They were like finding gold at the end of the rainbow. If you managed to score some, they were usually turned into pot roast sandwiches or enjoyed cold straight from the fridge. No judgment here. Grandma's classic pot roast was a culinary triumph that made every meal feel like a special event. Grandma's spaghetti and meatballs were legendary. Like they could make even the most stoic of diners break into a happy dance. This wasn't your average pasta dish. This was a symphony of flavors, a pasta party where the meatballs were the VIP guests. Grandma's kitchen was filled with the aroma of rich tomato sauce simmering away, mingling with the scent of freshly baked meatballs that were more like small, savory orbs of joy. Each meatball was perfectly seasoned and cooked to a golden brown perfection, creating a contrast of crispy edges and tender interiors that would make any food critic swoon. This Italian-American dish was so beloved even Frank Sinatra couldn't resist. While you likely won't find this combo in Italy, it was perfected by Italian immigrants in New York who adapted their recipes to what was available in America. Sinatra's love? Pure comfort. Meatballs like Mama used to make, and pasta that brought a taste of home. A perfect blend of old-world flavor and American ingenuity. The spaghetti itself was cooked just right, with a bit of bite, never mushy. When combined with the meatballs and that deliciously chunky tomato sauce, it was a pasta dish that felt like a warm embrace from Grandma herself. And oh, the sauce! It was so flavorful that you could practically hear it singing "That's amore" as it coated every strand of spaghetti. Leftovers? You'd be lucky to see them. Spaghetti and meatballs were so good that they were often devoured before the first bite had even been properly enjoyed. Every forkful was a reminder of why Grandma's cooking was simply unbeatable. This wasn't just dinner. It was a celebration of everything wonderful about comfort food. Biscuits and gravy. Grandma's piece de resistance that could make anyone's day a little brighter and their pants a little tighter. This was the breakfast, or lunch, or dinner, who's judging, that could turn a regular meal into a grand event, all thanks to that creamy, savory sausage gravy. This is the Southern breakfast that sticks to your ribs. This dish dates back to the early American frontier when biscuits were quick and gravy was a smart way to use up meat drippings. By the time Grandma took over, it was all about that creamy sausage gravy over fluffy biscuits. It's the breakfast that says, it's time for a nap. Grandma in the kitchen, her apron dusted with flour as she kneads the biscuit dough with the kind of precision that could make a chef's heart skip a beat. The biscuits, they were golden, flaky, and had the kind of texture that made you believe in breakfast miracles. Every bite was like a warm hug from the inside. And then there was the gravy, a rich, creamy concoction made from sausage drippings and seasoned with just the right amount of spices. It was thick enough to be called a meal rather than a side, and every ladleful was like a spoonful of pure comfort. The gravy would soak into the biscuits, creating a delightful mess that you'd happily devour without a hint of remorse. Biscuits and gravy were more than just a dish. They were a celebration of all things comforting and delicious, and Grandma's version was always the best. Did you get a little misty-eyed remembering Grandma's kitchen magic? Which of these timeless meals made you drool the most? Drop a comment below with your favorites, or let us know what nostalgic dishes you'd love to see next. And don't forget to hit that subscribe button, because trust me, you won't want to miss our next tasty trip down memory lane. Stay tuned for more mouth-watering nostalgia.